Welcome to the Vibrant Living Network. Have you ever wondered what is possible beyond possible? What is the thing you've been wondering and inquiring about? Are you just feeling stuck and don't know why? Are you thinking or are you seeing? Seeing allows us to expand and have this other experience. We want to invite you for that wake-up call. We want to invite your spirit, your soul, so to be more alive, more connected. Glenn Brooks has been a life coach for over 33 years, author of Divorced to Patterns, Not Each Other, an explorer of what is possible. He has worked with people all around the world. Join us for a wake-up conversation, a dialogue with you, and our regular co-hosts, the money healer Stephanie J. Alvarez and Dr. Nicole Kane. We will have some of the most interesting contributors. We will be talking to some of the most interesting people and have some of the most resourceful teachers, wisdom-filled people from around the world join us. Share your voice, ask the questions, become free of the known into a new world of possibility. We are going to talk about all the things you wonder about: how to live, how to heal, how to connect, how to love, how to be seen. Your life is precious. Enjoy it.
Hello, I'm Glenn Brooks with the Vibrant Living Network. Is your life, is your health by design or by accident? It could be your life as well. Vibrant living is really about this curiosity, this sense of wonderment, where we can live this vibrant life. You know, the idea is our health by design or accident is really about this going beyond what we're used to, going beyond the normal. Imagine being able to go beyond symptoms and this idea of normality to this very robust way of living and awakening. Over the last 30 years, I've had a chance to sit down and meet people and have my own experiences where discoveries were made that really opened up a whole new way of living, a whole new way of creativity, wonderment, and resources that were rarely considered. On this format today, I think you're going to love it. We're also going to be covering an international format that's happening at Harvard about how movement affects our life. So welcome to the Vibrant Living Network. And from the depth of my soul and heart, I want to welcome Kai Cole, who's our executive producer. He's just an immense contribution. I'm so enthused about having him work with us on a regular basis. And welcome to the Vibrant Living Radio Network. Welcome, Kai.
Thank you. I'm so pleased to be here.
And, of course, we have Kim Moyer with us today, who's a resopath. And she's, for the last about 30 years, she's helped people find out what their body's saying. Because your body's always speaking. It's a question of your listening, right? A lot of times we're surprised about different challenges in the body, but your body's always speaking to you. So we're going to talk to Kim. She will be a significant part of our program in a regular way, an ongoing way. People have asked me to comment about thought viruses. I wanted to talk briefly about thought viruses and Graven images. What are thought viruses? And what are Graven images? Because if you ask me the most significant thing in terms of people's ability to have more freedom and grace and a sense of power, but not power over anybody, but this sense of power where you can really kind of relax into the wonder of your body and well-being. So thought viruses right now, for instance, it's flu season is a thought virus. A thought virus is, I'm 71 and I'm getting old. So thought viruses are thoughts that we consider and we accept as reality. And I wanted to give you an example. So thought viruses are also connected with conclusions and assumptions. We're going to get really into that today. Conclusions and assumptions are the poison of relationship, and they're also the poison of our health and our creativity. When we assume or conclude something. Now, about 20 years ago, I was doing a series on perfect timing. How do you find timing? How do you find rhythm? And during that series, I met a woman named Jean. And Jean was an organizer. She was an organizer and a feng shui master. And she came to see me. It was really interesting. I want you guys to think about this in terms of one of the most significant topics, which is feedback. How do we take people's feedback? You know, one of the things that Nick Gonzalez, world-renowned oncologist, nutritional oncologist, said to me is most people die after a diagnosis. He was world-renowned for his work with a nutritional approach to pancreatic cancer. We became good friends. He told me the first thing he would do is remove the interpretation of the diagnosis. Jean, who came to see me, was an organizer and a feng shui master, and I accepted that I was messy, that I wasn't an organized person. And she came to see me, and I thought she was going to externally help me with the organization. But what really happened was she sat down with me. I was sitting on the floor, and I was sorting out papers, and she sat next to me and said, Glenn, she goes, you have a system that's so profound and so organized, because I see with you that really what's happening is, like as an example, I could go to a bookstore and I would know not only the books that I was looking at, I would know the book who influenced the books. And she pointed out to me what she did was, and this is the gift of profound healing. The gift of profound healing and profound awareness is that we actually give something a different meaning or purpose or interpretation. And what she really gave me that day was she recognized something in me that I didn't see until she languaged it. So imagine there's something in you, and it doesn't come to life until it's languaged, right? So in some of the indigenous traditions, you cannot call someone a disease. You cannot do that because in some sense you're emphasizing and putting the attention in the incorrect direction. So when I was with Jean, I owned and embodied something different. And that impacted my life, and that really was a major contributor into developing another whole way of not just helping people become vibrant speakers or unscripted. It changed me. It shifted me in terms of like paying attention to what mattered. And the idea of a graven image is kind of like, okay, think about someone you know. I say to people, knowing is a dangerous thing sometimes. Go beyond for a moment what you think you know about them. Just take an eraser and wipe it off. Now, what's really there is a human being or being, and, you know, a graven image is kind of like, oh, I know Frank. Frank is like this. Right? You think you know that person. What's kind of interesting is when you go beyond a graven image, you'll start to see, and not just see, I want you to play with this, but you'll start to invoke and bring something different forward from them. So I invite you to play with this idea, what feedback is. Kai, I want you to, it's such a blast having you here today. I'm so appreciative of you and what we're going to do together because, you know, how I see this is kind of like I asked one day, I said to the divine, to the universe, to God, I said, you know, there's someone I sense coming that's just going to make such an immense contribution. And I'm so much better as a we than a me. And there you are. So wholeheartedly welcome. And I just wanted to get your take on thought viruses or graven image or anything I said that you feel like you'd like to comment on or share with the audience. And welcome again.
Thank you so much for having me. It really, really is a pleasure to meet you and to work with you and get to know the wonderful things that you're doing for the world. So for me, to you, that is my expression of gratitude, absolutely. So, yeah, thought viruses are really, really interesting, and I love this amazing coin that you phrased. It is really interesting to watch how people can influence each other. And I know from a scientific standpoint, like we all have our own gravity. And to think that having our own gravity, having our own sphere of influence can also be expressed as thoughts. You know, thoughts are just energy, just like anything else, but we share them with other people. So once we begin to tap into them in a healthy way, and when we tap into them in an unhealthy way, you know, either way, we're still influencing people very deeply. And I love the way that you're speaking about it today. Thank you, Glenn. I'm also very curious as we step into the subject of graven images. Oh, perfect. We have Dr. Gerry, who's amazing and also helming the wonderful conference on movement and cognition at Harvard University. Gerry, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Awesome. Well, rather than talk about me, let's talk about you. Dr. Gerry, am I saying this right? Leisman?
That's correct.
Awesome. Can you please give us an amazing introduction to the conference that you're having at Harvard this summer?
Well, I don't know if it's an amazing introduction, but it is an amazing conference. It's a conference on it's on movement and cognition, and it's the articulation of the two. And we're looking at how the two integrate from the vantage point of
beautiful. Thank you.
Evolution, from the vantage point of child development, fetal development, aging, various kinds of diseases and disorders that connect between motor and cognition. For example, Parkinson's disease. In addition, we're also looking at applications in elite sport athletes. But at the end of the day, it is the articulation between movement sciences and cognitive sciences and how it plays out in different applications.
Excellent, excellent. Now, Glenn and I have been in a series of conversations about you, and we had the wonderful opportunity to have a conversation with you about the importance of communications between professionals and also between fields. Would you like to comment on that as well? You gave a marvelous analogy, about babies and swimming.
Well, a fair number of, there are many reasons why I think, and it's my own opinion, we have so much difficulty in advancing or in making advances in medicine. In fact, probably in most aspects of science, and that like bad marriages, we don't talk to each other properly. And so it's not the information. It's the lack of a common language. It's the lack of opportunity of people from various disciplines to get together. And so, I mean, one example of how a lack of understanding can work out very quickly is if I were to speak to many people from various disciplines, medicine included, about whether a Parkinson's patient has an intrinsic problem in walking, the answer would generally be yes. And so the motor disability is treated chemically or otherwise through physical therapy, through drugs, and so on. But in fact, because walking is a spinal response, there is no intrinsic problem in walking. The problem is in deciding to walk. So one of the symptoms of Parkinson's disease is gait freeze, where people intend to get to some other place in a room or at a distance away and don't move. However, if one were to affect one of the pathways that connect between the basal between an area of the brain, a lower end of the brain, and the area of the brain that deals with decision, well, you can treat it that way. But if you were to do something as simple as holding a cane and bouncing the cane at the ball of the foot, the person would be able to walk with no difficulty whatsoever. There would not be gait freeze. So the issue isn't necessarily a chemical intervention. That's one way of getting to it, but it's not the only way. Another way might simply be by getting feedback in such a way that the cognitive system, the system that's involved in the decision to move, and the motor system that is actually involved in integrating the walking actually start talking to each other. So in the same way that we have problems between disciplines talking to each other, the body also has problems sometimes in effective communication between regions and various systems. And it's more of a systems engineering approach to understanding fundamental problems of all sorts that I think actually gets in the way of effective treatment. So in our application in the upcoming conference in Boston at Harvard Medical School, we're trying to ameliorate that in some way in this particular application only. But there's so many other areas of endeavor that would highly benefit from our ability to speak to each other properly.
Yeah, I want to say you're listening to the Vibrant Living Radio Network. I'm Glenn Brooks along with Kai Cole and talking with Dr. Gerry Leisman. Boy, Gerry, I want to say we've been
I think we just dropped.
That's okay. It often happens.
I'm
absolutely. So yes, if you would kindly continue, Dr. Gerry. We were talking about, communication between different systems. How has that expressed itself in your life and your journey through education and your practice?
Well, if you talk about me personally, there was a trip that started with music. My first degree is in music. They got me into medicine, in particular neurology of childhood, and got me out of that and into physiology, neurophysiology, neurosciences, the behavioral sciences, and finally with biomedical engineering, which is what I ultimately did with an eye on rehabilitation sciences. So how to find alternatives by high technology means in order to, A, fundamentally understand how the nervous system puts itself together and how it is that we might be able to apply that knowledge into day-to-day practice, either with or without pharma involved. I had no particular withhold or difficulty with the pharmaceutical industry. The opposite. I think they do wonderful things. But that's not the only way in. And so my journey was about how does this all work? And the brain and the nervous system is fundamentally different than other systems in the body for good reason. It's the computer. It's the control entity. It's the place where that needs to know what's going on. It's the base where the basics or the basis of how it is that we process information coming in and are able to react accordingly to that information coming in, either reflexively or by processing or by perceiving the likelihood of danger. And so that manifests itself as your guts run overtime, or I need to run as fast as I possibly can, or alternatively freeze in my tracks. So the issue of how it is that various brain regions articulate with each other took me away from anatomy. For example, one area of the brain being controlled with executive or decision-making functioning, another area being controlled with vision. Well, it doesn't work that way with kids, and it certainly doesn't explain how it is that we can recover function after brain damage. So there must be some other model that we're looking at. It doesn't explain death. It doesn't explain consciousness. It doesn't explain effectiveness in learning. It doesn't affect how it is that elite sports athletes do whatever it is that they do, and I don't. I would like to, but I can't because I don't have whatever it is that they have, and I don't know what they have. So that got the applications involve mathematical applications such as graph theory. It involves networking. It involves understanding how various regions of the body talk to each other. But that's really the way in. And so that's pretty much my journey.
That's amazing.
Gerry,
Hi.
we're gonna continue. I'm Glenn Brooks of the Vibrant Living Network. We're happy you're with us today. Stay with us, Kimchi. We'll go to you when we come back. We got Kimchi Mori with us. She's a resopath. She travels the world about how people can listen to their body. Such a pleasure having you today on the show today, Dr. Gerry. And this is an ongoing series. I'm Glenn Brooks. Vibrant movement, in fact, can change our brain and our lives. Stay with us.
The Real Conscious Connection. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. Host your show on IOM FM, the radio network of OMTimes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTimes. Hosting a show on IOM FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
Hello, I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, host of OMTimes Magazine's flagship radio show, What is Going On? My passion is sifting through information, research, and innovations from new thought teachers, speakers, and researchers pushing back the boundaries of what we know about life, energy, metaphysics, and the universe. I love shifting perceptions about who we are, why we're here, and how quickly impossible becomes normal when we open our minds, expand our awareness, and accept that the only limits that exist are those we place upon ourselves. So if you're the kind of forward-thinking, eager investigator of what lies beyond the current reality that most perceive, why not make a date to come play with me in the field of possibilities at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time every Thursday, and together we can discover what's really going on.
In the wake of a disaster, what one thing can you send that will help people the most? A blanket, a tent, a sandbag, a doctor. Actually, if you send a monetary donation, you send all these things. Even a small donation can make a big impact and can quickly become exactly what people affected by disaster need most.
In the wake of a hurricane, your monetary donation can make a huge difference to those in need. To donate, visit supporthurricanerelief.org. That's supporthurricanerelief.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Welcome. You're listening to the Vibrant Living Radio Network along with Kai Cole. Kim Shimoy, who's a resopath, she helps people find out what their body's saying, what their body's speaking. We're talking with Dr. Gerry Leisman, who's putting this wonderful conference together around some of the factors, some of the invisible sometimes, healing factors and big health factors, also the bigger conversation. For the last 30 years, I've been exploring this conversation with a series I recently did on Parkinson's, people that seem to be able to go beyond the symptoms, the very thing that was paralyzing them. One of the last shows we did, we had a lady on who was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. She wrote a book called Who Says So? She told me at the end of the show she was going to go out dancing, that her whole life had changed. What is the missing ingredient? What is the connection that makes this difference in the quality of people's lives? I've been exploring that, and I also have a speakers bureau where I help people with these sometimes invisible messages. I work with dancers. I work with movement specialists. I work with people who are movement coaches. When I heard about this conference, I realized, and Dr. Gerry said it's a dialogue. It's an exploration. It reminds me of the first conference I went to on mastery, where I spent 7 days with professionals, doctors and lawyers. I was on staff. And the question was, beyond their assumptions and presuppositions, beyond the assumptions of presupposition of doctors and people in the health profession, what is this new standard? What is this new thing that allows people, patients, to experience and connect with some of the wonders of their brain and their body, which has often been a missing equation? So to say I was enthusiastic, it was an understatement. Having the pleasure, we had a pre-conversation with Dr. Gerry about the conference at Harvard, and I realized that my commitment to have a speakers bureau on this and move forward, because I see not just hope, I see people getting inspired in a way, Dr. Gerry, that for a lot of people, pretty much as Dr. Nick Gonzalez, oncologist, former part of the Sloan Kettering, says to me once, that people die after the diagnosis. He told me his first commitment is to get people to see and sense a possibility and to live at it, because that affects physiology. I'm curious, and I love the field of exploration. I love how you connect fields and connect dots that often aren't connected. A lot of times what I say to people is that what's in the way of your healing, what's in the way of your big health sometimes are experts. But where there's a community of people like you're putting together at Harvard, where they explore and go beyond their paradigm, beyond their presupposition to see what's really there, and perhaps meet together so that movement, which is a medicine, which is a medicinal treatment and a way of life, becomes part of a way of life. I'm curious if there's some things you've come up with, because I know you have, as a scientist, you're always inquiring, the curiosity is there. Have you noticed repetitively certain things that are profoundly medicinal, that people have incorporated, certain healing principles or big health principles that you've come across, that you've seen change the momentum of reverse illnesses or impact people? As an example, Anatomy of an Illness, Norman Cousins, loved his work. He talked about humor being such a factor. Have you seen, what are the things that you've seen make a profound difference in the quality of people's lives from being involved in this kind of inquiry around movement, cognition, the brain, that you'd want to share with people?
Well, one thing is movement and cognition is just one subset of a whole lot of other things. So we can take this into the area of genetics, and we can talk about what the connection is between breast cancer and mental retardation. The answer is there isn't. However, there certainly are enough studies, both in applications of gynecology and in intellectual disabilities, that indicate that the same chromosome is involved, and we can, from that, start to understand better how certain diseases, disorders, or difficulties in life travel in populations. Epidemiology allows us to do this sort of thing. The point I really wanted to make was, function of a scientist is not to, as most people are unaware, is not to answer fundamental questions. In fact, it's not to answer anything. It's to do essentially two things. One is to examine relationships, that which is associated with something else. And the other is to take a look at probability, the likelihood of seeing the same thing again and again, that is not seen on the basis of chance. And given the fact that we are examining or looking for things that are repetitive, that certain relationships between variables that are repetitive, we can then start looking at treatment possibilities. So, for example, I can go out on a limb and say something shocking, such as cigarette smoking does not cause lung cancer. Cigarette smoking does not cause lung cancer. Well, everybody knows that, excuse me, thinks that it does. But if it does, we're going to have some questions that we need to answer. But science really can't do that. Science can only ask the questions. So one of my questions is, so why is the rate of lung cancer as low as it is in Greece and Japan, whereas the incidence of male smoking in Greece and Japan is probably the highest in the world? So that's a question. The answer is I haven't the foggiest idea. I really don't know. Maybe it's a Mediterranean diet. Maybe, well, not in Japan it isn't. Maybe it's, well, I don't think it's the mercury in fish that they eat. I just don't know. By the way, I'm really not interested. I'm just interested in asking the question. And if there are things that I can't measure, then that gets us into the area of belief. And there are a lot of things that I believe, but I'm not going to share on this program. But there are a lot of things that I know because I've seen it, and I'm not talking about cause. I'm talking about the fact that, oh, well, I've seen some things and they're interesting, so let me share some of the things I've seen. The placebo effect is real, meaning that if I think that I'm going to get treated by something, then I have a significantly increased likelihood of actually getting treated by that something, even though it's a sugar pill. So the placebo effect is a brain-based issue. I don't know why it works, how it works, but it does have some sort of effect. That's one example. When I tell you that because of the statistical relationship between lung cancer and cigarette smoking, that cigarette smoking is a good thing to do, of course not. It's a dreadful thing to do, and it's highly associated with lung cancer and emphysema and all other kinds of horrible diseases and disorders and heart conditions and so on. But if I were a public health person involved in dealing with public relations, media, and so on, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that I'm going to put on the side of a pack of cigarettes, cigarette smoking causes lung cancer, because I'm not going to discuss science, the philosophy of science, with the general public. It's pointless. However, we deal with relationships. So your question really is about, have I seen any interesting relationships that relate to our fundamental understanding of things? And by fundamental understanding, I mean, in particular, the nervous system, because that's what I deal with. But it's a small little window over the whole aspect of life. So instead of dealing with all about life, let me tell you what I've seen. So we had a patient once upon a time, going back some years, who was a student at the University of Manchester in England, and she got brain sick, an infection, herpes simplex type infection, wound up in the neurology department, whereupon she was x-rayed, CT'd, and so on, whereupon it was found that about 80% of her cortex was missing, her cerebral cortex was missing. Well, how did she get to be a student of architecture, by the way, at the University of Manchester in England? The answer was she was really bright. And she happened to have been born with 80% of her brain missing. Sorry, not brain, but cerebral cortex. The gray matter was on the sides, and the central portion was cerebrospinal fluid. So her brain had liquefied. She was fine. Why was she fine? Because it happened to her, however it happened, and I don't know how, from birth.
Mm-hmm.
If something like this were to happen to an older person, then you would see profound dysfunction. Why is it different between kids versus adults? I haven't the faintest idea. I don't know. But it's certainly going to change the nature of my thinking about brain organization. That is, so if you've taken Psych 1 or Bio 1 or Human Anatomy or whatever, or Education 101, whatever it might be, and you're told, well, the temporal lobes deal with speech and language and hearing, and the area anterior to it in front of the temporal lobes deals with expressive language, and the frontal lobes deal with decision-making and inhibitions of one sort or another, and the visual areas deal with vision, and that has its own complexities. So I'm going to tell you, well, I got a problem with your understanding of this thing, because here's a girl with 80% of her brain missing, and she's doing okay. I can also have a child with something called Rasmussen syndrome, which is a terrible thing. It's an uncontrolled epilepsy in kids roughly starts at their age of around 3-ish or so. And the treatment for that is hemispherectomy, the removal of one hemisphere of the brain. These kids, they're slight motor impairment, perhaps, but cognitively they're fine. What's that about if the brain is organized into sections? And it gets me to start thinking about all kinds of ramifications. It gets me to think about bilingualism. What does bilingualism have to do with this? Well, I'm multilingual from birth. I don't do languages very well. In fact, I flunked a few courses in college. Not flunked, but I got really close to doing that. And D, I guess, is close to flunk. And, why was I able to do this as a kid and not do this as a neurological adult? And why is it that I can put a bilingual person in an fMRI machine and the area, assuming they were bilingual from early childhood, the area of the brain that's responsible for expressive language and is activated in one spot in a bilingual, whereas in a person who acquired bilingual skills later on in neurological life as a teenager or above, it's located and distributed in multiple parts of the brain. The answer to that, very simple, is the brain is less efficient. So maybe the issue of disease and disorders is less about where the damage is, which is the medical model, part of the medical model, and more more about the issue of optimized function. So instead of looking at disease as a disorder, as black and white, perhaps it's not. I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying perhaps it's not black and white. Perhaps there are. Yeah,
I just want to, Gerry. I'm just going to argue the network. You're listening to the Vibrant Living Network. I'm Glenn Lewis, along with Kai Cole, who's our brilliant international producer, and also Kimchi Moyer, who's on our Vibrant Speakers Bureau, as well as she travels the world, talking about indigenous cultures, health, well-being. She's also a resopath. She actually works with people, helping them listen to their body in a way and make changes so they can experience the sense of optimal well-being and this other model, this what we call vibrant medicine model. So, Kimchi, I know you wanted to ask Dr. Gerry something or interject. I wanted to open it up because it's such an inspired conversation to go beyond both. It's an inspired conversation to go beyond the existing models. And one of the models that I work with is a relational wisdom model, that people really drop their presuppositions, they become aware of their assumptions, and they really ask questions. So I love your description of the scientific model. So, Kimchi, did you want to interject something? I welcome you to.
Yes. Hello, Dr. Gerry. This is Kimchi Moyer. I'm a resopath. Honor to meet you here, sir. And I love the radio show. I like to begin to share one of my favorite quotes that I present every time at the medical conference before I speak. It's from Nikola Tesla. It says, the day science begins to study non-physical phenomena it will make more progress in 1 decade than in all the previous centuries of its existence. So the day science began to study non-physical phenomena, I was very fortunate to be mentored by biophysicists and doctors in Germany who talked to me about the structure of the universe, and everything is all energy, and energy, all cells breaks down to atoms are protons, electrons, neutrons spinning, and then together with the information in the field, that will form the structure of who we are today, how we look, the structure of our nose, and so the information, the thought, like you were mentioning, in the field, spinning along with the electron, will then form who we are, form the glands, therefore the hormones, and then become our characters. So what Dr. Gerry was mentioning before, as scientists, we observe, we ask questions. Even when we take the sugar pills, why does it work? Because the person with the intention already project themselves in the field and see themselves already getting well. They already arrange that trajectory, and the body has to obey. And even when Dr. Gerry was mentioning, there are many ways to communicate. And if you look into the work of Dr. Fritz Albert Popp, who came up with that, coined the term biophoton, that all cells communicate with each other through light. All cells communicate with each other through light. In the electron contains the photon. In the photons contain the information of the universe. So I just love what Dr. Gerry is sharing, talking about. And as a resopath, I'm there every day. Same thing like what Dr. Gerry was mentioning. I'm just asking questions to the body. I'm just asking questions, make observation, and record the data. As the information come back to biofeedback and resonance, I begin to see that the body is an intelligent system. It talks back to you. It says, so this is how I want it. This is what's happened to me, and this is where I'm going. So that's just so much we can all collaborate together.
We did a series on the ultimate hospital, and we asked the question, what would an ultimate hospital be? Who would be in there? And one of the things we came to with myself and Dr. Richard Moss was that it would be a place of curiosity. It would be a place where, as you said so well the other day, Dr. Gerry, that the people would leave their boxes behind, their neurological box. They would bring the wisdom or the intelligence, but not the prejudice, not the. And I love the quote that Kimchi just had, because I just think that there's, from my inquiry and from building just an amazing team of movement coaches and people in the movement fields, we've been exploring recently relational movement and the perception that people bring to each other and the attitude, that these invisible factors have such impact. I don't think I get your response to what Kimchi said. Is there anything that struck you particularly, Gerry, or that you wanted to respond? Oh, I guess we got to go to one. I got to go to one of our pauses. Let's continue. We'll go right back to you, Dr. Gerry. Pleasure working with Kai Cole, who's with us, my new executive producer. Appreciate you guys. Kimchi Moore is a gift. Your life's precious. Enjoy it. Stay with us for more vibrant living.
Feed your soul with waves of consciousness on OMTimes Radio.
Ascending Hearts is no ordinary dating site, but a spiritual dating site with a purpose, to link you with your soulmate. We engineer the serendipity so you can trust that you will attune with someone that has the same matching vibration as you. Ascending Hearts, the conscious dating site for the spiritually aware. Try Ascending Hearts for free, ascendinghearts.com.
More than 24 million Americans have an autoimmune disorder, and that number continues to grow. I'm Sharon Saylor, and I'm one of those 24 million. To put that number in perspective, cancer affects about 9 million and heart disease up to 22 million. That's why I've brought together top experts and those thriving regardless of their diagnosis to bring you the latest, most up-to-date information. Join me, Sharon Saylor, Friday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, for the Autoimmune Hour on Life Interrupted Radio to find out how to live your life uninterrupted.
Hey, Dr. Phil here. You know, I help people solve difficult problems every day, but one problem has me stumped: childhood hunger. Nearly 16 million children in America struggle with it. Luckily, the Feeding America network of local food banks collects surplus food, giving hope to hungry children and their families. But they need your help. Join me in supporting Feeding America and your local food bank at feedingamerica.org.
Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
You're listening to Vibrant Living Network. I'm Glenn Brooks. We're doing our series on vibrant medicine and vibrant movement. Honored to have with us Dr. Gerry Leisman, who's putting an amazing conference together. We're going last year, upcoming in Tel Aviv. Kimchi Moy, who's a resopath. She helps people pay attention to the healing messages of their body and begin to take action and begin to change the level of their well-being. By the way, Kai, let's give out information about the conference. And Kimchi, I'm honored to be able to introduce you in person to Dr. Gerry. But I wanted Dr. Gerry, we'll let Dr. Gerry respond, Kai, and then we'll get out the information about the wonderful conference coming up this summer. Please, Dr. Gerry, you're going to respond.
Yeah, well, I'm going to respond. Which is, I'm looking for the right words for saying this. What I actually heard was that we need to look beyond the physical. My response to that is, no. There is the physical and there is the physical, because we live in a physical universe, and our limitations are our ability to measure. So we have instruments that allow us to do more than ever before, that allow us to measure the physical universe. In fact, on my side of the pond, I'm, as you know, from associated with the University of Haifa in Israel, which is where I am right now.
Yes.
This week, we had a fundamental discovery that was made in physics of the first support for the Einsteinian notion of the existence of dark matter. Well, we weren't able to measure it. Einstein kind of theorized about it. And yet we found for the first time, I think it was a joint project between the University of Arizona and I believe the physics department at Tel Aviv University. It was published in Nature. Well, we're now able to measure something that we weren't able to measure previously. But it's physical. And the same thing is also true with thought. Thought is not an esoteric thing. Thinking, cognition, decision-making are things that are highly associated with neuronal change. They're associated with metabolism in the brain. We can record EEG, for example, electrophysiology, which is the sum total of or the aggregate total of the functioning of cells in a particular area of the brain associated with some sort of stimulation. We want to get into philosophical debates about what controls the controller. Well, you can do that, but that's going to put us into the area, and I'm making boxes, it's going to put us into the area of religion. The reason that it's not a box, what I just said, I think, is because what I'm saying is, okay, with the tools that I use in how it is that I make my living, I can't measure certain things. So I'm going to believe and assume that they exist, or I'm going to believe that they don't. But it's belief. Get into the area of belief, you're talking your priest, your imam, your rabbi, or your guru, or whatever it is that you choose, can even be your political guru, but it's about belief. So my limitation to where this conversation goes is I believe that given the nature of the universe, as I understand it, there's a physical world and then there is a physical world. So as long as our conversation is addressed to that, then it's okay. I mean, there are all kinds of issues that follow from this thing. Like, I believe here it comes. I believe in Darwinian theory of evolution, in natural selection. But I have a problem with it. And my problem is, okay, well, it absolutely makes sense, and that's what happened. But that explains about 20% of the life that's been on the planet, or 20% of the time that life has been on the planet. We have an effective explanation. When primitive cells were in the oceans, distributing their DNA all over the place, I'm trivializing it somewhat, that wasn't Darwinian until one day, maybe 80% of the way into the time that there was life on the planet. By life, I mean cells that reproduced and produced other cells. One day, one cell said, I'm not donating my DNA anymore. Goodbye, finished. That's the origin of the species. So what happened before? And the answer is, I have the foggiest idea. I really don't know. I'm sure there are people brighter than I who work in this thing that have a whole lot of theories about it. So, yeah, everything is physical, but there are things that are not effectively explainable because we can't measure them. That gets into something which is metaphysical. And I'm not going there because I can't talk about what I don't know. I can only talk about what I do know, or what I think, or what I can hypothesize, what I can measure.
Yeah.
So you wanna get in someone else to answer.
Well, you know, I want to bring this back to Kimchi in a moment. I wanted to share a story from a series that I did on sacred medicine. We did a series on sacred medicine, or medicine that, you know, really incorporated people's philosophical and kind of was he was a medicine man. I work with a medicine man. And I asked the medicine man, because we had a very good connection, I said, well, share with the audience what you would call sacred medicine. And his wife was a kindergarten teacher. And during recess, one of the kids, she had a little bit of a mole on her neck, and one of the kids hit a mole, and it was cancerous, and they went to the hospital. And he was saying that it was a meeting between the surgeon and the oncologist. And I guess the oncologist began first, and he shared a very dreary picture of what was going to happen, to her. And Claude Pilot told me as he held her hand, he felt she was in some ways dying. It really impacted her at this invisible level, a level we may not be able to see, but he felt it really, that she was, if you will, assaulted by the diagnosis and the conclusion. And as that was happening, the oncologist took the other doctor by the belt buckle and threw him out of the room, turned around and said, I see things in a different way. I have a different sense of the treatment protocol and the emotional, mental, and the vision of this going. And Claude Pilot said to me, that's sacred medicine, that our perceptions and interpretations matter and affect physiology. And that was, what's your take on that factor of attitude, intent, shared interpretation? What realm would you put that in terms of a big health model or vibrant?
Okay. You want me to put this into a box? I will do that.
No, I don't want you to. I just wanted to see if you had a response.
No. I have a response. So it works something like this.
Okay.
Do I believe in the power, in the intentionality of the human being? The answer is absolutely yes. And I emphasize it's a belief. What do I have to support that belief is the next question that would come from that, and it's the following. There's a guy, his name was Ivan Pavlov, who in 1905 got the Nobel Prize for doing work on classical conditioning. And I'm sure most people know about his original experiment, which had something to do with a dog and a buzzer, and a dog was hungry, and the dog was hungry and saw meat, he salivated, and when it was paired in time with a buzzer, the dog can ultimately salivated to the buzzer alone without the presence of the meat, because a normal physiological response was changed. There was a change in the stimulus that was necessary in order to evoke a normal response. Now, can I do this with other systems of the body? Forget about Pavlov. He started this whole thing. The answer is yes. There was experiment. I think it was done by a gentleman named Horsley Gant in the U.S. I don't remember where, and sometime in the 1930s, I think, where he had taken an individual with a pupillary light response, would be normally observed in response to the stimulus of a flash of light over the pupils. And that is, every time you turn on the light, the pupils constrict, and every time you turn the light off, the pupils will dilate. So what he did was he paired the presentation of a light with the word constrict, and after repeated pairings, the pupils constricted, not in response to the light, in response to the word, because of the association in time, because of paired associate learning. Body learns how to do something that would normally be considered to be a reflexive or an automatic response. Same thing also happened, I think the team was headed by someone named Sawry, S-A-W-R-Y, about 1953-ish, where injections of insulin, overdose actually, insulin, was administered to rats and paired with the presentation of a light, repeatedly. And after repeated pairings, instead of the insulin overdose, the rats were given saline, salt solution, and the light was turned on, and would you believe that the rats went into insulin shock without the insulin? So that works in the negative. That is, I can create a situation that can do damage to someone. I could do the same thing with blister formation. Someone could be hypnotized, for example, and believe that a piece of chalk was a cigarette. And after a period of time, because of that belief, the body will produce a blister. You will actually have a second-degree burn. The real question is, well, if you can do this damage to yourself, can you fix it? And the answer is, I believe so.
Gerry, I just got to ID the network. Gerry, Dr. Gerry, hold on one second. I just got to ID you. You're listening to the Vibrant Living Radio Network. All around the world, we have a wonderful audience, and I'm happy you're with us today. Kai Cole's with us, Reza Path, Kimchi Moyer. I also want to thank Regulat, R-E-G-U-L-A-T, for being one of our underwriters who has a wonderful product. I won the whole body, our Integrity and Real Food Supplement Award, Regulat. Boy, Kimchi, what I want to do is I wanted you to have a brief moment to just comment, or what I find interesting among smart people is we're constantly inquiring, right? We're constantly inquiring, and I would agree that a lot of the beliefs we have are diseases. In fact, the beliefs themselves are diseases. And the question is, when we take off these beliefs and these assumptions and presuppositions, what frees a person? What I guess feeds this, what some people might call the energy, the chi, life. There's different language for it, prana. Boy, Gerry, I'll tell you something. It's such a deep conversation when we dive into this. It's a beautiful thing. Kai, do you have the information about the conference? Let's give information about the conference at Harvard that's coming up.
Absolutely. It can be found at movementis.com. That's movementis.com. On body, brain, and cognition at the Joseph B. Martin Conference Center at the Harvard Medical School this July, the 27th through the 29th.
Thank you, Kai. So, Kimchi, did you want to? I have a feeling you guys could have quite an in-depth. Go ahead, Kimchi.
Yes. I love what Dr. Gerry said. I feel that Dr. Gerry, you are true to your art. We need you to be in that world that you are doing. And what I feel is that we can all collaborate from different angles. In fact, when I was studying with a different German physicists, and what they were explaining to me, that we as human beings, we exist in a different dimension. We in this physical space, but we also in a more energetic space. And that I think they even have a name for that space. There is like 12 dimensions together. A human being exists in both a physical and an energetic space together. And they divided clearly, like from the first to the sixth dimension, we in the physical space, and from the sixth to the 12th dimension, we are more in the energetic space. So I think it's great that Dr. Gerry and other scientists out there are making this measurement of the physical body. And as science advances, technology advances, also allow us to measure the energetic space, which is the beginning. We are now just beginning to tap into that space. The Chinese have talked about acupuncture, how energy moves through different meridians. We are now just beginning to tap into that understanding that energy condensed in certain area of the body. The Indian call it the chakra. It's like a vortex of energy. And the acupuncture point is nothing more than a condensed energy in that location where you can access it through a needle. And the needle is used because it is a piece of metal, and metal conducts, and you can get energy to move. As energy moves, it gets biochemical reaction, get the blood to move. So you just trigger, just like electricity. Electricity is something we cannot see, we cannot touch, but it could be measured. So it's similarly, and we are now just beginning to enter that space. And I just think this is great. I love the scientists. They are true to their science. And then we can all come in, do our work, and collaborate together.
Yeah, beautiful. You're listening to the Vibrant Living Network. You know, Dr. Gerry and Kimchi and Kai, I'm gonna play this exhibition tennis match with a former #1 tennis player, and we're using this as an opportunity to explore movement and dance, because I think another practical application is a lot of people want to grow younger. They want to move differently. Like a lot of people realize when Moshe Feldenkrais, who I believe was a physicist, said that the average adult, moves, maybe they have 20 movements. They have a very small number of movements. So a baby or, a child, they have all these movements. What happens? What happens in terms of our ability to move with more awareness, to become more intelligent, to inquire, to have the sense of our bodies is one of the things that's going to be highlighted at the conference. And what I love about the conference, again, is the cross dialogue, a deep question of what is science, its application, how does movement fit in, how does some of these assumptions and questions impact this big thing I like to call vibrant medicine. And this is something we're going to continue with. And is there anything you wanted to leave the audience with today? And I deeply appreciate the beginning of what I see as a partnership and having speakers and really diving into where vibrant medicine and movement and the brain. By the way, I went to the bookstore. There's more books on the brain and healing and rejuvenating the brain and brain longevity than ever before. People are starting to have a recognition of the brain, and they don't want to let the brain grow. They really are inquiring, how do I breathe? How do I move? How does that make a profound difference? How would you like to leave us for this session today, Dr. Gerry, before our next deep dive together?
Well, I think if there's anything I can say universally, not so much about what I do, but in more how to approach life. So it's from personal experience, I guess. It would be talk to yourself, talk to your neighbors, talk to the people that you love, shut up and listen, and be open to possibilities, any possibility. Doesn't mean that because you heard it, it's right. But just be open. That's so difficult because we all start with the biases that we have from the very beginning. My religion is better than yours. My way of thinking is better than yours, or I'm different than you are. You look differently than I do. And if you drop all of that stuff, you can get into interesting places. So, for example, there's work that people have started years ago that never got picked up on because it didn't fit into any one particular discipline. So drop the discipline thing. And for example, I'll leave you with this one thing that came out of the Boston area. A gentleman named William Condon who in the 1960s had used video to take a look at how it is that young children move in a playground. And what he found was that they moved at roughly around 5 hertz. And the ones that were moving at 5 hertz entrained with each other. That is, they were socially connected with each other. The ones that weren't entrained with the others did not. They were the kids on the out. And the standing cortical rhythm in children is 5 hertz. Whereas in adults, it's the same thing, except that standing cortical rhythm is 10 hertz in the brain, and yet the movement changes recordable by video are 10 hertz as well. And that has something to do with social contact. What's that about? Well, there's the field of communications that would be interested in looking at that in more detail. It's not my work. It's a literature that exists. What does this have to do with people with communication disorders, with speech disorders, with left hemisphere damage in adulthood? How do you get into treating these patients on the basis of what's already known? The Russians had been doing a lot of work in eye movements, for example, in the 1930s. They never got to the U.S. because of differences in language. So my parting shot is shut up and listen, do a lot and talk less.
I guess that's a good kindergarten that begins to go beyond opinions and point of views is the beginning of real wisdom. Dr. Gerry, we've only begun. I appreciate very much your work. I'm happy you've been here today. To learn more about the conference at Harvard, it's on our website on OMTimes Radio, the Vibrant Living Network. Thank you wholeheartedly, Dr. Gerry. Looking forward to our next conversation. Looking forward to being there and meeting you in person and having a wonderful exploration.
The future of Internet radio is here. OMTimes Radio, IOM FM.
Humanity Healing International is a small nonprofit with a big dream. Since 2007, HHI has been working tirelessly to bring help to communities with little or no hope. Our projects are not broad mandates, nor are they overnight solutions, but they bring the reassurance that no one is alone and that someone cares. To learn more, please visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Grab a cup of tea or a glass of wine and tune in for Inspired Conversations with publisher Linda Joy on Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern. Linda creates sacred space for leading female luminaries, empowering authors, heart-centered female entrepreneurs, coaches, and healers. A soulful venue where guests openly share the fears and obstacles they've overcome, wisdom and lessons learned, and the personal journey that led them to the transformational work they do in the world. Inspired Conversations to empower you on your path to authentic, soulful living.
I'm Fidel Nshambo. I was born in a city called Bukavu in the Congo. We were a loving family, and then, boom, everything that I had disappeared in a single day. People think that when you are a refugee and they resettle you to America, your problems are done. They don't understand that that's the beginning of everything. I was not born a refugee. I was made one.
It's time we welcome refugee families with open arms. Learn more at embracerefugees.org, brought to you by the Ad Council.
Welcome to the Vibrant Living Radio Network. I'm Glenn Brooks. Our network is all about exploring how we can become more vibrant, more aware, to drop some of our conclusions and assumptions, and to enter another level of vitality and well-being and inquiry. I'm honored to have with us on a regular basis Kai Cole, who's our international executive producer. And also, you're listening to our last hour, Kim-Chi Moyer, who's a Resopath. She'll be with us on a regular basis. She'll also be reporting from around the world about some of the nutritional, energetic, what are these real food, what are the factors, what are the lifestyles, what are the things that make a really big difference. And I also want to thank again Dr. Gerry. Kai, I want to hear you speak more. I wanted to get, since we've got a whole new audience here, we've been kind of reflecting on and inquiring into movement, the brain, thoughts, and how they can make a a profound difference. During my series on Parkinson's disease, it was quite radical in the sense that many of the people that came on, there was one woman out of Novato, I forget her name, but she was talking about living her life past the diagnosis and really discovering not just going beyond the symptoms, but actually discovering new movement. So, you know, I remember in my life, Kai, when my grandfather, I wanted to live with my grandfather. I thought my grandfather was the only person that kind of got me. And I was kind of waiting for us to move out of my parents' house. And we went to the doctor, I think, on a Thursday, and he said it was normal. And I said, what a weird thing to say to someone, normal, whatever that means. And he passed away that next night. And I guess what it was, it really was the beginning of being kind of curious and wondering, and then I kind of get into my own health dilemma. But I think, and my health dilemma was that I had sinus headaches, went to the doctor, and the doctor prescribed this medication for the sinus headaches. I grew up, my father had always taken these medications every day. As a matter of fact, him clearing his throat and his sinuses was a daily thing. That's how I woke up, not an alarm clock. So I think what began to happen in relation to my life is I would also meet people. I was always fascinated, Kai, with people who had these radical injuries or neurological disruptions or injuries, and I would meet people who would recover, and I found the mentality and the attitude and their practices to be very different. Like they just didn't conform. And of course, you know, Bernie Siegel said to me once, if you want to die quick, go to the hospital and conform to their standards. The people that actually pains in the asses live longer. And what is it to be a pain in the ass? It's the question to not just become homogenized into the beliefs and culture around us. I'm happy you're here in the second hour. I'm even happy. My happiness is increasing with you, Pat.
I'm glad to hear that. And it was great to listen to Dr. Gerry. I am a fan of his stories, and he reminds me of a lot of the things that I experience in my history as well. Yeah.
Well, give us share with us, because a lot of people are hearing you for the first time, and share with us. Share with people about you, and introduce yourself to the Kai Cole life. What's it like? What's it been?
Thank you, Glenn.
You're welcome.
I love my alignment to academia. It is so wonderful to be able to speak about these particular subjects, you know, and to really, as you say, Glenn, dive deep into their meanings that we allow into our lives. I actually did my undergraduate degree in architecture, and while I was doing it, I said, man, I really wonder what we're learning to become by studying, taking these classes. And I actually scheduled a meeting with the dean. I said, I don't remember the dean's name at the time. Oh, it was Dean DeMaio. I said, Dean DeMaio, I really don't feel like we are being taught to become architects. I said, I think that we're being taught to become better architecture students. And she absolutely listened and heard me out.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
So what happened? In other words, what was the response to that? I love it.
The response was that she scheduled me a meeting to meet with the graduate officers at Yale, which was where she came from before she went to NYIT, where I was studying. And it was amazing to be amongst so many well-known architects and to, really talk about what it was that I felt in my heart. So I said I went in, to study the structures that we build around ourselves. But what I'd like to study for my graduate degree at Yale is metaphysics, because I want to understand the spaces that we create within them. So it was a wonderful, wonderful journey. Instead of going to Yale for that graduate degree, the universe handed me a crash course on physics in the real world. So I was very happy to take it that way as well.
It reminds me a little bit, Kai, of over the last 27 years, have had a pretty close relationship with Dr. Bernie Siegel, and was with Bernie Siegel a couple of years ago. One of the things he said that was fascinating to me was, and it reminded me, listening to Dr. Gerry and Kimchi, was that any time he wrote a paper on healing or love or medicine, which is the name of his best-selling book, Love, Medicine, Miracles, every department at Yale said they couldn't take it because it wasn't in their department. Now, the other thing about Bernie that was interesting was, and he worked very close to this one anesthesiologist, none of the people could get the value of why any of the patients had to make a drawing, because Bernie wouldn't work with someone unless they made a drawing. But they all noticed that the healing rate and the happiness and the cooperative level of the patients was so profoundly different, but none of them could put it into their intellectual paradigm. It didn't make sense to them. At the same time, the level of results was very different. And I think that's a little bit of the dilemma of the inquiring person, you know what I mean? Like what you did at school. It's like, wow, it's like that requires, I don't know, that's the Oliver Twist effect or something. It just seems like asking a different question or inquiring into what is education. I love what Mark Twain says. He doesn't let his phone get in the way of his education. It helped me a lot. I think, because I used to go to school and feel like, God, I must be incredibly stupid because this seems so boring. It didn't inspire me. It wasn't until I would read. Actually, Mark Twain had a big effect on me. You know, that success, real success, is turning your vocation into your vacation. It was like, yes, why don't we cover that in first grade? Right? Like, what's and then it seemed like, the health equation in my family, seemed to Deepak Chopra used to say to me this one line that I like, Kai. He used to say, he goes, Glenn, he goes, we grow old and die because we see other people grow old and die. And it'd be like, it's kind of interesting because if you're in a culture where everybody has a hunchback and you get used to it, there's no vision and there's no. So what happened with you in terms of you had this inquiry, and your inquiry became kind of a way of life, a way of connecting architecture to conscious branding, to helping people have this vitality around putting their big message out. Like, to give us, because a lot of people don't know what to do. A lot of people are in the sense they have an inquiry or an awakening, or simply they can't stand their jobs. They have something in there, but they don't. For a lot of people, it becomes frustration. For you, it became another level of moving forward.
Absolutely. I did take the traditional path, and I did my internships, and I went right into the field and worked at a thriving firm in Manhattan as a junior architect, and I thought that something was missing. And I came across a quote that science does not make sense without considerations for consciousness. And I realized that what was missing in my practice was people. I was sitting behind a computer doing red lines and, designing all day, but I wasn't really interacting the way that I felt my soul wanted to. So I worked my way up at that firm to become the director of marketing, and I said, okay, I get it now. The people, that's what charges the spaces. That's what makes a house into a home. That's what really gives these buildings and these edifices vitality, and that's where I want to be. So translating that, I ended up securing an amazing gig as a celebrity publicist at a wonderful agency in Manhattan, and that's where I found out that what I really wanted to create in this world were social structures. And today I like to call it tribe architecture.
What do you call it?
Tribe architecture.
I love it. So I'm beyond honored. We're working together, and you're the executive international producer, idea generator, paradigm buster, vibrant brander. What moves you the most, and what would you like to share with the audience about being the vibrant living producer? Like, I figured I'd let you share it because I'm going to love hearing it. So, and I think they're going to be touched too, because you're going to be so significant in the program and what we share with people, both on the air, in our films, and our Vibrant Mastery Challenge. And what moves you the most? What's your take on how this? Because I'm really honored. I really feel like you're a deep family member, and I'm mystified about how this wonderful thing happens. Because sometimes it looks like you're going to find someone you're not, and you go through 100 people and you realize, well, that wasn't really it. I think a lot of people wonder about what is that fit that makes all the difference. And by the way, before I before we met, or maybe we met before there was some non-physical way. I always feel that there's some kind of connection that happens before the physical. One of my teachers was Dr. Valerie Hunt. She used to talk a lot about, your body gets sick on an energy level before it gets sick on a physical level. She thought they were connected. What's your big vision?
Well, one, I have to say that it is an absolute pleasure to work with you, Glenn, on so many levels. What I feel like is that, that I'm entering different dimensions as a being, by being able to interact with the network, being able to interact with the wonderful initiatives that we have stored for the year to come, the year coming up. And just in our first interaction in introducing Dr. Gerry and his amazing conference at Harvard, he said something that really touched me. And he talked about his sentiments on the separation of the universality of thought. And really, we were meant to study life itself. We don't have to put ourselves into a box. We don't have to be labeled as an architect or a publicist or a tribe architect or, an executive producer. I'm really honored to be here to be able to explore life and to explore who we are as a collective conscious, and also, how we feel individually with you here on this network. I'm so pleased.
We told people we were going to talk about the high libido diet, an upcoming show with Dr. Nicole Kane. I'm so inspired that you two are going to meet each other. She's been a significant family member. I went to see her as a homeopath and naturopath, and I was sitting, seeing her face and listening to her, and it was like, I said, Nicole, there's something beyond the obvious. Something's going on here. We have, it's kind of like you, Kai. There's something else going on. Like there's a big mind effect, a big soul effect. There's something happening. And, I called her one day. I said, so many people, they miss having this experience of ecstasy, connection, this ability to be relational. And, I started to dive into a lot of different work out there. And, I looked at Ken Wilber's stuff a little bit. He was saying that, in an integral model, where there's different domains of awareness and consciousness. He said, many people say that the toughest domain for a lot of people is the relational one. And I found that to be, I don't know, it just really moved me. When I went through what I call my relational tsunami, it really left me in an altered world. I never really experienced a level of pain and inquiry. I actually had a show in Seattle at the time, 5 days a week. I was doing a morning show, and it was the first time, Kai, that I didn't just feel totally in tune with everything around it. How I got into radio was I got invited on a show, WOR New York City, and it was like some crazy hour, like 12 midnight. And I realized I had no problem getting up. So I realized when it came to meeting people and kind of this bigger sense of mission, it really, so I never used an alarm clock. So I haven't been late to a show almost ever. I think it was one time there was traffic or something, but mostly I could feel this sense of energy and connection before I even get there. And many people, of course, how I developed my work was I met a lot of people who had books, but they couldn't get the books out there. So I thought, that's interesting. I wonder why not. So that's some questioning. I guess the high libido diet was a lot more than just a diet. It was really this sense of intimacy and connection. It was also the sense of that people could meet each other in this other whole part of the nervous system, which was this replenishing, you could say Cupid's medicine, if you will, or Cupid's medicinalness. So since it's on our topic board, I was curious, what rings to you when you hear about the high libido diet? What do you feel like, has intrigued you? Because, it seems like we get all this belief and conditioning and kind of like, it's almost like pleasure's not built in our lives. Pleasure's kind of like, it's an obscure thing you're supposed to maybe have when you're 72 and you're on a cruise ship. But when does pleasure become our lives? And for a lot of people, and I discovered this at a certain point. I was in Cape Cod, I was on the beach, and these two women, it was the first time I noticed this. It was, I think, 1993. And they passed each other, and they both said to each other they were both busy. And that was like becoming a real mantra. Busy. Why are people busy? In Chinese medicine, busyness is an illness. They're busy. And this woman, Jean, comes to me. I told this on the other hour about, she comes to tell me what organizing, because everybody says, well, you're messy. You're not disorganized. And she comes to see me and says, Glenn, you're one of the most organized. You have a sense of rhythm and awareness that is so there. She says, I look past and I see it. I see it in the way you could cross-reference topics. And so she gave me a way of seeing it and having another ability that I didn't see before her. And that's why feedback is so profound. What we say to people, how we language things, is one of the most profound things that happens in a day. How we listen, it impacts people at the level of summoning new abilities and awarenesses in them. I know what the thing was I wanted to share with her. So anyway, she's a photographer, and her goal, like a lot of people, is to fill a practice. And we're doing a morning drive show. And she comes to the studio. We do a 5 to 9 in the morning show. And we're giving away vacation, and we're talking to people about, what's a vacation that transformed your life? You never saw it the same way after this trip. And we're taking calls, and she says to me something on the break. She says, Glenn, I'm not happy. And I said, why? Tell me. She says, well, I'm at 100%. I have as many clients as I want. And I said, say more. And so we started to realize that when people get overloaded, they become drained, lost, it impacts them. And yet our whole culture is built on more. And yet what I've discovered as a coach, doing this, being a professional coach and working with all kinds of people, surgeons, authors, everyday people, beautiful people, we're much better at 80%. We're much better. We're more efficient. We're more, when I heard the book, The 4-Hour Workweek came out, I was like, yes, work gets really old when you do it mechanically. I wanted to get your take on the high libido diet. Pleasure. I'm going to give you a big question here, a big exploration, because I think we're going to have so much fun featuring people. We have so many interesting contributors, along with Dr. Nicole and you. What's your take on, you've gone to college, you've inquired. What's your sense of pleasure, high libido? Like, give me what impacts you or touches you about. Because you said to me, you said it's off the charts. You like the high libido diet. I get different responses. Do you like in? What are you curious about our series, and what do you want to see it bring to people?
Awesome and great question. Thank you so much for asking. I love what the title brings forth. A lot of times we see articles in the magazines and so forth, and we're like, okay, we're talking about the same thing over and over again. How to find your lover in 10 steps, or how to take care of yourself in 20 steps. And what this really brings forth for me is a charge of energy, because we don't really think about that anymore. We don't think about pleasure, just like you're saying. So to have it as a source of, like, a fueled ignition in our lives, high libido, to me, I hope that it really helps people to resurge that feeling that we've been suppressing for so long. There's so much shame and guilt, and I can go on and on about all of the emotions that we associate with the word libido, by itself. And Dr. Gerry had a very amazing story about how just the word can create the same responses in our body as the actual thing itself. So you're bringing forth a tsunami of information and sentiment that I can't wait for us to uncover.
I want to say the same thing. So I guess when it first kind of came to me, I was on the phone with someone at GoDaddy, and I said to her, high libido diet, and she said, wow, that sounds fantastic. And I said, well, would you take a moment and ask the coworkers? And all the coworkers were really into it, and Nicole was really into it. And then I would say to people, and it had a similar effect, and when I first told people I liked the idea of the 4-hour work week, people would say to me, like, are you sure the author didn't call the book the 4-day work week? And I said, no, that's too boring. It's got to be 4 hours. And I realized it almost like the high libido was almost like, well, where can I put that in my life? And this is not what Viagra's for. Oh, my God, do we have a break coming in that I'm forgetting about? I guess we do, Kai. Can you believe that? That's amazing. All right, you like Precious and Joy? Stay with us with Kai Cole, inquirer, contributor, Yeah, she's beyond all the titles. She's an incredible.
The cutting edge of conscious radio. OMTimes Radio. IOM-FM.
OMTimes magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. Connect at omtimes.com. OMTimes, creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Hello, I'm Lisa Berry. Join me every Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time for Light on Living, a chance to see new, hear different, and feel more as I shine the spotlight on all the ways to lighten the load of life's challenges. Light on Living is your link to that new way you're looking for, that new understanding that will enhance your life, and that positive connection that will support your growth. So join me and you'll gain insight and start to see things in a new way that motivates you.
My name is Meera Batra, and this is How I Live United. Many families have come to America for a better life. I advocate for these families with United Way. United Way empowers them to see opportunities available. We help them get involved with their kids, schools, and network within the community. My name is Meera Batra. I help families see opportunity and succeed. I don't just wear the shirt, I live it.
Give, advocate, volunteer, Live United. Go to liveunited.org. Brought to you by United Way and the Ad Council.
Good afternoon. You're listening to Vibrant Living. I guess you're on all different coasts, all different time zones. You're listening live to Vibrant Living along with Kai Cole. We're talking about the upcoming show, the High Libido Diet, our vision for it, what it's about. I was just thinking Kai had a very unusual childhood, needless to say. My father, my adopted father, I found out I was adopted when I was about 11, by the way. I listened in on the psychologist's office, and sure enough, he wasn't my biological father. It impacted me. It was like, that was a big mistake. Anyway, he was into the work of Wilhelm Reich, Dr. Wilhelm Reich. Now, Reich, I'm going to take a big risk here, Kai. I'm going to see if I can simplify Dr. Reich's message. It's going to be a big risk, but I'm going to go for it. I'm going to give it a shot. So, Reich was the first, I think he was the first psychiatrist, or he was the first doctor of psychiatry that really saw the body. Like there was a tremendous disconnection. So what he called energy was organ. So that's life energy, organ. And when people breathe, this is why I went out to study breathing. I thought, wow, this is so true. I never learned to breathe, and I realized on some level I knew that people are holding their breath. I had that sense, especially when they saw me walk into Hebrew school or something. I had this sense that certain people would hold their breath, especially when you cause trouble. And which I did, which I love. So what's causing trouble? Causing trouble is inquiring past what other people often are ready to release and move with you on, right? So that's part of that. So anyway, my father's Dr. Wilhelm Reich, and Reich's talking about organ, life energy, and he's talking about orgasm. You know, I realized, Kai, before I dive into this with you, which I'm totally inspired, did we contact Mark from Vermont Tire by chance?
Mark is unavailable at the moment, but I do hope that he'll be able to join us soon.
Oh, okay, great. Okay. You know, otherwise we'll need to do it next week. It's just, all right, let me continue on this track because I wanted to share my early experiences. So my father was into Wilhelm Reich, and when he got really in bad shape, he would go to see this psychiatrist who practiced what's called organ therapy. By the way, the Nazis, what was interesting in Reich's discovery, they weren't able to breathe, and they had body armor. So they had body and character armor, which basically meant they couldn't really feel and sense their bodies, which meant they would be conformists. You know, obviously the thing was they were brutal but unconscious of themselves. And so Reich, there was a video that was done on Reich's work that was done in Yugoslavia in 1969, and it showed a lobotomy, the breathing of a person getting a lobotomy, or the non-breathing, and then someone in an orgasm. And I realized it's interesting in the culture how we like on some ways we talk about sex, and all, like in some ways it's hyper sex, but this idea that the body could hold this energy and it could be shared with someone else, it's really talked about or explored. So one of Reich's students wrote a book on sex in the heart. And one of the things that was really interesting in that book was that couples that are in deep resonance and have these intimate moments where they share the big wave together, this big energy experience, it actually heals the heart. It opens the heart differently, which is similar to another body of work about Cupid's poison. And Cupid's poison was all about that when people just have one type of sex, which is kind of the sympathetic, almost like a fast food meal. There's nothing wrong with it. But once you get that, just that, it misses this other whole level of the energy of intimacy, this deeper level. And so I got really interested, and I realized, Kai, when I was like 13, I want to ask you, have you ever had this experience or recognition of this experience? So my experience was when I was like 10 to 13, somewhere in there, I remember thinking, I couldn't get it. I heard about this thing called divorce. I thought, why would people divorce? I couldn't get it. It seemed really brutal. I just kind of felt it at some level. And then I was, many, many years later, I was in this thing and this legal process, and I felt in some deep level, Kai, that this was a topic that I would explore the same way that I explored medicine, the same way that I explored why people could, reverse things, why people could have restorative, regenerative lives. Of course, we're going to meet Dr. Dharma Singh Khalsa soon. Dr. Dharma Singh Khalsa wrote a book called Brain Longevity. He's studying how Alzheimer's could be reversed at certain stages. So the conditioning and the, I guess you could say the relation, this idea that divorce is a remedy, the Big Mac idea is a remedy, it misses the whole other level of depth, surrender, and connection that happens when people go beyond their division into this other level of deep partnership and resonance and breath. And funny enough, so Kai, I'm having this realization. I'm having these dreams. I call them soul scenes because I can actually see and interact with them. And what happens is people start to come up to me. Even I'm selling a car, and people start to ask me relational questions. This one woman, she asked me about the Mercedes, and she goes, "Is your 89 available for sale?" I said, "Yes." And then she's like, before I say anything else, she asked me about this relationship she has with a guy who drinks. And this happens again and again and again. So the crisis I was in was revealing another aspect of what was deep inside, and also was very relational, because people would come to me, and I found it to be so intimate. This guy stopped by my house, Kai, and he told me about his parents' divorce. He was probably like 50, and his parents divorced 20 years ago. He told me it still was impacting his life. He says, "Glenn, it's such a myth, that it happens and it impacts you because you start to relate to things from this division." And of course, I'm in a lot of spiritual and soul communities and inquiring communities, and I feel like a lot of them, they don't seem to inquire there. So when I started to write Divorce the Patterns on Each Other, by the way, I have a chapter in there called The Ecstasy Bonds, because I would talk to marriage therapists, because I thought, geez, why do they seem so, they don't seem to really get much about sex. And then I realized because they're not really educated. It's kind of like what Gerry's talking about. They're these little subcategories. So one of the things I discovered was that, and I want you guys to catch this, and Kai, I want your comment on this, that we catch the paradigm on some level of the practitioner. So for instance, if you go to a practitioner, therapist, healer, if it's in their frame of reference that, a marriage ends after 13 years under certain conditions, there's a good chance you'll be divorced. So as an example, if you go to someone who just reveres the energy of marriage, and they're marriage friendly, this is in the relational world, they discover this, that you're going to have a whole different experience. But if you go to someone who's just knowledgeable, there's a good chance, again, you'll be splitting. And then there's knowledgeable, there's friendly. Oh, there's a third category. But the idea is that, and I've seen this with healers, I've seen this around, that the frame of reference your practitioner has, and this could be a lawyer, this could be a dentist, going to give a shout out to Dr. Saul Preston, who's out of this world, biomedic dentistry. So this is, I guess you could say, the inquiry, of course, related to teens. Because I thought, oh my God, I would start to ask people, when I started to talk about divorce dependence on each other, Kai, I had this woman call me who was teaching this leadership work. And she says, I can't teach it anymore. And I said, why? And she said, it's too much involved with personal responsibility and creative expression, which everybody thinks is such a great thing. But she said it's missing the co-authorship and the relational dimension. And she said, well, this, your stuff around divorce dependence on each other is very applicable. So I guess what I had happen, I wonder if you had this happen, I had this huge crisis. And then I started to see again and appreciate the impact of both thought viruses, conclusions, and kind of like, I guess having these paradigms is easy to bill on or easy to, make money on even, but it missed this other whole level of like, what happens? How do people have this miracle of reunion? How do they discover that? And how is that, why is that absent from so many articles and conversations? That was, then I began to have, I don't know what you want to call it. I had another sense of when I would meet people, I could get a sense of what pulled them to each other, and that unfolded into vibrant matchmaking, where I came up with some other principles, and some of my beloved teachers like Dr. Norm Shealy impacted me. You're one of the best listeners in the universe. I wanted to, I guess what I want to ask you or to reflect upon is what I'm saying about the reference of the practitioner or the lawyer or whoever's in your life. Their frame of reference is so powerful. How often do we actually ask them what their assumptions? How often do we say to them, "What are your assumptions and conclusions?" As if they even know. I'd be curious if they even know. You know what I mean? Like when you go to see someone, and I know you said to me the other day that you could feel their energy, you could feel their, in a sense, their vibe. What would you say about that? What's your take on that topic?
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that we're going to go to break in just a moment, but what I would love to say is that for me, I feel like I experienced it in the opposite and inverse sense as you, Glenn. For me, I grew up with my mom. She was a single mom, and my grandma was separated.
Yes.
I didn't know that marriage existed. So I, when I saw, these other, amazing family units, it felt to me almost like a void in my life. And, just to note here,
like a what?
Right now,
like a what?
It felt like a void in my life. But today I'm engaged to my soulmate, and I feel so fulfilled. And for me, it opens up a new dimension of relational wisdom, as you say, Glenn. And for me, it's because I have a whole new relationship to what exists. It was like I found out that the sun is moving at 45,000 miles per hour. A lot of people don't know that, but when you do, it blows your mind. There's something else. There's another way to relate to everything that's around us.
So you graduated. In some sense, you went beyond. See, this gets into the unscripted power. So you have this script, right? And a lot of people, they live the script, and they don't even know, like, when Act 2 begins, that's it for the rest of their lives. But you went beyond Act 2, and you started to see this relationship with your soulmate. How do you think that occurred? What's your take on it?
Yeah, for us, it was an exploration of ourselves. In order for us to see each other, we really had to connect with who we were. And in doing that, we created so many different situations together and individually that allowed us to learn at a very, very rapid speed. And so because we were both doing our inner and outer work at the same time, we were able to meet at this blissful location, that was meant for us because we were working in order to be with each other. We were investing in, our souls in each other. And because we both made that commitment, without any formality, I really think that the universe opened itself up to allow us to be able to see each other.
That's so wonderful, by the way.
Thank you.
I hope it's contagious for the audience.
Me
You. By the way, your prediction, it was a very powerful psychic prediction. You predicted an upcoming break, and it's here. Pretty good accuracy, by the way. All right, along with Kai Cole, listening to Vibrant Living on Glenn Brooks. You're less precious and joyous. Stay with us, and we'll continue to inquire. High libido, connection, and a new world. Really, a new world. A new world begins when you stop your beliefs, right? When you drop your beliefs, that's where the new world begins.
Bringing a more conscious lifestyle to your world. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Change and growth are part of natural life and also part of your spiritual life. Everyone needs support and guidance, especially during life passages. Upgrade yourself with the OMTimes Experts program. With OMTimes Experts, you have access to the best intuitive coaches, spiritual teachers, counselors, astrologists, and oracles. Our team was carefully selected so you can trust. Find out more at experts.omtimes.com.
My name is Victor Furman. Some call me The Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio, and we'll explore these topics and so much more on Destination Unlimited.
Listen and imagine. It takes 5 seconds to send a text, and for those 5 seconds, you're driving blind. Life is worth more than a text. Stay alive. Don't text and drive.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org, a message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, Noise, and the Ad Council.
We're doing a national radio show to speak to you, actually. We're continuing with the Vibrant Living Network. I'm Glenn Brooks. I'm going to turn the tables on Kai Cole today, she's beyond title. She's really just this infinite being with genius and ability and awareness, and she does all these miraculous things, and we've come together to bring Vibrant Living to a new level. All right, so what's something you want to share? What's your spontaneous moment of the show, Kai? What's something that if you left the show and didn't share, you would have missed it? What is it?
If I missed the show I wanted to share, I mean, like, all things aside, spontaneity, love it. I want to dive into this, like, just talking about the relational wisdom that you brought up, because it really resonates so deeply with me. And this analogy that I brought forth about finding out that the sun is moving. You know, we talk about stillness and we talk about silence, and these are such relative terms. You know, I heard that if, even if we attempt to be silent, we can, at the lowest frequencies, we can still hear our blood moving through our veins. So silence, as we come to think about it, doesn't really exist. And now stillness, if we're sitting, on our yoga mat, and we're laying down in Vipassana, and we think that we're being still, when, the sun is moving at 45,000 miles per hour and we're spiraling in the universe behind it on this, amazing earth, that gives stillness another meaning to me. So when we think about our relationships and how we are being in this world with other people, other beings, within ourselves, with our emotions, with these words that we're speaking, it just brings about a whole different way of thinking that I am so happy that you're speaking about and introducing everyone to through your radio station, the amazing summits that you put forth, and just speaking to people on a day-to-day basis, Glenn. Thank you.
You're deeply welcome. It comes to life really through the relationship, really. It's, I have a course I teach for couples. It's called The Thunder of Silence for Couples. And It's on relational meditation. It's on relational wisdom. And it's so interesting that you should mention this whole thing about stillness, because I realize it's such a misnomer, right? Because in some sense, movement and relational movement, and I first started having people gaze with each other probably over 30 years ago. And I've never seen something transform a room. I did this at Stony Brook University. I had a series I did called the Feeling Great course. And I had people sit down and, and I realized at a certain point that people throughout the day, we have our counterfeit mind and our real mind, our aware mind, let's call it. A lot of times we're so identified with the counterfeit mind and the busy mind. And when people lightly gaze with each other and notice their breath, I saw the room just really open. Like people, this is at a university, so a lot of students are very strained. And I saw them kind of drop into this quality called being. So when I first started coaching, I said I was coaching a state of being. And I realized that's something that in our culture, we never really learn or talk about. Now, and I love this thing about stillness, because the idea that in this situation, a couple could be sharing the sense of vital, rhythmic pulsations together, vital, rhythmic pulsations, not just individually, but as a unit, as a union. I started to see in this course, when people's breath is changing and they're having this shift. And I love that you're saying that, because stillness, I think, doesn't really, it seems bland or stagnant. It's like it doesn't do justice to what it's really about. I didn't know, by the way, the sun. I will call you next time I'm curious about something in the universe. I didn't know the spins. I didn't know the what do you call it, the rate of speed at all. What made you inquire into that?
Oh my goodness. I like to give credit to my uncle, who is an amazing biomedical engineer, just like Dr. Jerry. And, he actually practices inquiry, especially when we're with each other. So he's like, did you know? And I was like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. What do you mean that we're moving, in that manner? So it literally blew my mind, and it just came about in casual conversation.
So what's the greatest, if you had to say one thing that's really, impacted you in terms of, vision or healing or awareness, was there one thing, was there something that happened, or did you find it to be a series of things? Like what, because you've already made some pretty major distinctions. You've already, it sounds like you've been an inquirer and you wanted to go from inquiry to vision. Is there anything that, was there like a moment that really shook you or opened you, or you saw it differently, or physical or energetically or emotionally, or has it been cumulative?
Oh, that's a good question. I can explain it through the explanation of how it is that I see life. And that, of course, has been cumulative. It's that I went from inquiry to experience, and I really found out that there is, for me anyway, there's no lines in between. Once we start to ask the questions, our life unfolds the answer in front of us. So there's no placeholder. There is no just putting it down on paper. There is no just leaving words in a book. Once we enter them into our mind and speak them aloud, or start to think about these things, they actually appear. And the way that I think about life is as magic. And I was like, oh man, that word, magic is Disney. It's cartoons and stuff that we see. It's magic wands and hats and stuff like that, but it's really not. It's what makes us alive. It allows us to be, and I'm using your word here, Glenn, vibrant beings. It is what gives us the fuel to be able to see and connect with each other. And the way that you were talking about vital rhythmic pulsations, to me, that's laughter.
Yes.
When you can share that with someone, when you can do that with yourself. And I have so many stories about the healing power of laughter, and that's my daily practice. Just that simple practice.
By the way,
of,
you have such a wonderful laugh, and I love being in rhythm with you around laughter. You inspire me to play. You inspire me to engage you from a place of humor because you so welcome it robustly. It's a gift that you have, so I love it. I can be depressed and tell you something, and you'll laugh and I'll be like, Glenn, wake up to this. Because you're right there. You're really willing to engage, that sense of play. And we're going to have comedians at our next Vibrant Living Summit.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Yeah, we're going to have, and, it's funny. Last time I went to Harvard, I had a pretty miraculous, I had a meeting with someone who stopped returning my calls. This is like years ago. And this friend of mine used to tease me about it. This guy wrote a book. I'm forgetting his last name. But he wrote a book called Play as If Your Life Depends on It. Play as If Your Life Depends on It, because we don't need sports. We need play. We don't need sports. So humor is something that we need. And I think on some deeper level we know that. And I think it just unifies us so much to have that sense of play. And so, when I developed this network, the Vibrant Living Network, Kai, I realized okay, there's vibrant comedy. We should have a comedy dojo. Dogs obviously profoundly impact people's lives. So there's got to be a series on vibrant dogs. There's food. Food is fundamental, and it's not just the food we eat; it's the environment we eat it in. That's how we got the vibrant. I'm sorry, we didn't call something vibrant. Actually, we called it the Integrity and Real Food Award. The Integrity and Real Food Award. But really, I think what I was looking for, and I love that you said humor is the expression or that laughter is vital rhythmic pulsations. I realize it is, but I love the simplicity and awareness of that, because to see two people laugh is the gift of the day. I mean, I've had to think about what's a day. And I was going to ask you how you begin your day. I could share my day. You want to go first? What's a day like for you?
You go first, Glenn.
All right.
I insist. You must.
All right. Wow. Well, I get up really early. I get up usually before sunrise, and I kind of feel into my body. I feel into my breath, and I usually, at some point, I get into water. I take a bath or shower, and I put my hands over my chest, my heart, and because usually during the night, Kai, I have imagery come to me, or I might call it soul seeing. And sometimes the imagery corrects something, like I see something that occurred, and this is how this film that we're going to produce called The Announcement came in. I wanted to see this in a different way. I wanted to, and what the film is about, it's about this couple that marries again, and I kind of saw that in this imagery. So through the night I have imagery. So if you call me 3 in, I don't really sleep where I'm unconscious. I'm usually very conscious of the imagery, and then I could see things. Like I'm seeing differently in the night. I make connections with people. So I kind of take that, and then I go to the bath, I'll take a shower, and I use this physical, I put my hands on my heart, and I sense people, like my daughter always, Leisha, my son, Donna, like people that I feel, you. So I kind of feel that. I feel like, I'm in this pulsation with them. I'm a big appreciator of Larry Dossey's book, Beyond the Local Mind. So I kind of feel in the day that I'm kind of, that's how I begin my day. I kind of begin it with this, this tune in. And then on a good day, I do some physical play. I go out. I used to, I haven't done this well, but I would skip through these fields. I would skip, and then I would sprint. And then what I would do is I would just kind of look at the sky. Like I would look at the sky. Instead of trying to, I'm saying looking, but I would also allow seeing. I would see how soft my eyes could be. Like when I'm looking at a branch right now, how much could I let the branch appear to me? So rather than I'm looking at it, I'm kind of allowing it. And then, I don't know, it's funny, guys. And also I have an awareness about something that was maybe a dilemma, but I see it in another light. I pay attention to my breath. I look for other human beings to play with. And I see, now I'm saying I, but really what's begun to happen significantly, it's really become a relational thing. I reach out to people that I feel I have relational union with, that they're like my relational, this is how the Vibrant Mastery Challenge happened. I realized, like, you know, you look at a person as they are and they go lower. You look at a person as they are, they go lower. You see them as to what they could be, and you give that to them. That's a whole different exchange. So I guess it's practicing these things. It's acknowledging that I know nothing, beginning from scratch. It's also finding a place in the day. I go to a wood-fired sauna sometimes and just kind of allowing myself to have an amazing sweat. And, of course, touch. You know, there's some people I just see them and we're going to embrace, and I'm going to have this moment of shared breath with them. And it's the same thing with some people on the phone I haven't even met. I feel this sense of, I guess my days are a combination of play, as much community, and going beyond my own small mind to discover something that I haven't seen before. It's your turn. I was just kidding.
First of all, that's beautiful. What a way to start your day. And as I'm predicting,
well, that's on a good day, yes.
Right. So
well,
I like
the other thing is when I'm playing. Well, I was just going to say, when I'm playing, I start to see things that I didn't see about people and what they're going through, and that gives me a lot of appreciation. I think about what Elizabeth Kubler-Ross said. She said, most people are phony baloney, but when you're real, there's nothing like it. So I do my best to get on real people, like you. So that's how I begin my day.
I think we get up at the same time, Glenn.
Really?
I'm usually up.
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
I'm usually up around
Okay.
4-ish. I like to watch sunrise. What I do is that I get up, I get out of the bed, and I head to the couch. And what I do is I lay there, and I give my body a chance to talk to me. I ask, if there's anything that needs to come up, whether it's an emotion, whether it's a sensation. So I start my day off with a dialogue with my body. But essentially, this is time that I spend with myself. So I spend some time nurturing myself for the first part of my day. And then after I feel complete, I start the inquiry. I sit and I start asking the universe questions in order to design the day ahead. I ask with the intention of experiencing the answer.
That's after you get off the couch?
Start with the questions on the couch
first?
And then, the answers unfold, and so does the day. I
deeply appreciate this so much. Stay with us. We'll be back. We'll continue next week with the Vibrant Living Network with me, Glenn Brooks, Kai Cole, and you. Your life's precious and joyous. Thanks for being with us today. And email us your thoughts at Glenn, GLENN.vibrantliving@gmail.com. That's Glenn, GLENN.vibrantliving@gmail.com. Your life is precious. I love saying that, Kai, because it is. Enjoy your day. Thank you, Kai.